Tex was an experienced smuggler. And it just gave me, I could say, go to Colombia, get a load, and come back.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Becoming the King of Pot. My name is Todd Denkin, and with me, of course, as always, is the King of Pot, Bruce Perlowin, my infamous cousin. Bruce, how's it going today?
Great, Todd. Looking forward to today's stories and interviewing with Tex E.
Yes, alongside Bruce there is one of his crew members and former captains, and he is a guy that was with the company for several years, so he knows the ins and the outs of Bruce's organization, Tex E. I love your name there, Tex. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, we are excited to have you, and Bruce, if you don't mind, if you could tell us how you guys met, and we'll start off the story there.
Okay, well, I met Tex because one of my main guys, Paul Hill, who was everything. You know, he was a stager, he was a captain, he was a co-captain on a plane, he went on reconnaissance, and he knew Tex from Florida, and so Tex was a very, very experienced smuggler from actually what I call maybe the cradle of civilization or the cradle of smuggling marijuana in St. Pete. He had done a bunch of his own loads with planes and boats and was extreme, did radio communication, stage boats, did the whole thing in Florida. And as Craig, the dockmaster, said, he was very comfortable with the group from Florida because they were very experienced, well-oiled, well-groomed smugglers from Florida, whereas the California people, it was all new to them. They were just
talk
great,
about that
great
for a
seamen.
second. Yeah, talk about the the cradle of smuggling civilization being in St. Pete, Florida. How did that all start?
Well, it started with there's this beach and Tex will to explain more of that. But there's this beach in St. Pete, Florida, and they were just a bunch of kids, surfers, and hanging out on the beach. And somebody went down to Jamaica, started with Jamaica, and some were coming in from Mexico because this is before the big loads of Colombians started coming in.
Yeah. And
the first big load of Colombians in the whole country came in from a guy named this guy here, Tommy Powell. All right, and he brought the 20,000-pound load. Or he tried to bring a 20,000-pound load into St. Pete area, but Colombia only had 60,000 pounds at the time. Fast forward, then Colombia started growing like crazy, and there was million-pound stashes and loads coming in. Not coming in, but down there. So it all started in St. Pete, and I got my pot from there. You mentioned earlier one of the episodes, I think episode 0, that the bathtub was full of pot, and and then headlines in the newspaper said Bruce couldn't give the baby a bath because it was full of pot, and we had a picture of that, and that was a Jamaica load that came in from St. Pete. All right, well, there's probably 7 or 8 groups working in there down in the St. Pete area, and then my first 2 bales in episode number 5, when Craig talked about the experienced smugglers. Tex was one of those guys. Very, very knowledgeable, every aspect. You didn't need to teach him things. He already learned from his own mistakes and from everybody else's mistakes, the do's and the don'ts of the industry.
Got it. So Tex, tell me about the St. Pete smuggling operation that you were working with and how you got started with that.
It really was just a small group of commercial fishermen, surfers, if you want, beach rats, that grew up there. And there's a very famous story of an open skiff. It's called a Lafitte skiff, and it's mostly used for net fishing, like mullet and whatever. And they took an open 24-footer, I think it was, down to Jamaica. And this is a very famous story. It's been written about. They got a load and brought it back up, ran out of gas, had to stash it somewhere off of Cuba, somewhere, I think it was maybe in Cuba, and then refuel and bring it back up. And that kind of started it. But at that time, in early 71, really, there was only a couple of people doing this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until much later, and they did several more of those trips. It wasn't until couple, 2-3 years later that a lot more people got involved. And there was, as Bruce said, there was, 6 or 7 groups that were very successful at what they were doing. They were all sea dogs. They were all seasoned, guys. They loved the adventure of it. And, they were making some money.
Yeah.
So the supply demand thing at that time, nobody was growing reefer. And so, there was a demand and they were the suppliers. So later on in mid-70s, I'd say it got crazy to where there was everybody. There was at least a dozen groups, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that were doing this. And so the heat was on the East Coast, Lauderdale, Miami, etc. And then when they realized what the hell's going on the West Coast, they started focusing their attention on that. And then there was a couple of busts and some people turned. And so the whole thing kind of unraveled a bit.
Right.
There was honest to God smugglers, no guns, no coke, no nothing. Right.
Yeah.
And then there were guys that, saw the big dollars with the white shit and guns came out, people got robbed. There were some bad cops, there were some bad feds that were involved as well.
Yeah.
So it was time to get out. And I happened to meet, as Bruce said, Paul Hill in Lauderdale. And he spoke to me about this great group out in California. And I said, geez, California, that'd be kind of nice. So I went ahead and went out and went to work for Bruce's company.
Nice. And you had a secure resume at that point, right? So you had the experience to get a job with them. How did you get started in the St. Pete area with moving weed around in and out of Florida?
Well, we started in Mexico, small sailboat, 32-footer when I think it was, and we go over to down at Campeche Bay in Oaxaca and bring back, 800-900 pounds. And the pot was not all that good as compared to where it got within a relatively short period of time after that.
Yeah.
But it sold. I mean, we threw it on a Winnebago and took it right up to the campuses up at University of Florida and then Florida State.
Nice.
And so there was a market. We developed a little bit of a market. And
sure.
As did other guys. They realized college campuses, as Tommy Powell will tell you, that, Ann Arbor, Michigan was big distribution.
Yeah.
So especially for the big loads, I guess.
Sure.
I
went to the University of Florida and literally everybody had a bong on their dresser or on their coffee table for sure.
Yeah. Well, there was, like I say, and then we did a couple sailboat trips and then a plane trip. And the pot started getting a little better. It became red bud. And since me, it was nice pot. But they still had trouble packaging it and getting it pretty. It was all burlap bags, So
right.
But then by that time, there was a couple other smaller groups that were doing Jamaica too. So word of mouth, and when Bruce talks about 200 people in the company, the Golden Gate Smuggling Company or whatever, it's a small world. I mean, players know players. You see people, you meet people, whatever. That whole 6 degrees of separation thing, you'd be surprised, how many people I knew him, So Jamaica became the hot point.
Sure.
And Mexico really couldn't keep up with the good red bud, the Sinsemilla, they put the roll. It was just not in quantity. So we decided we'd try the Jamaica thing and did a couple of sailboat trips out of there and then one plane trip. And, the 4 or 5 of us walked away and made a few dollars and life was good,
And are you thinking about getting busted at that time? Or are you thinking about, any kind of other violent crime happening to you, whether it's from the supplier or from the end customer back in Florida?
No, surprisingly enough, the suppliers they realized after a while that, wow, we can make some money at this with these gringos, so they treated us right. There was never any gun splashing there. As far as worrying about guns, coming in and stuff like that, as I say, we had a small group. It was only 4 or 5 of us, and the 5th guy was just transportation.
Yeah.
Take a Winnebago or a Ma Bell van up to the colleges. So,
Nice.
no, we didn't, because it wasn't enough money, and we were very closed mouthed. We did not go out and buy the new trucks and new houses on the beach and all that shit.
Yeah.
Uh, but it wasn't until really the cocaine started coming up, and of course that was mostly in, as you all know, the Cocaine Cowboys of Miami, the infamous Cocaine Cowboys. The guns brought a whole different dynamic. To me, it wasn't smuggling, Mother Nature. It was smuggling some chemical shit,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, that's interesting that you had the same sort of philosophy about, cannabis, that, right, it was just this Mother Nature's herb and you wanted to help give it out to people. Is that how you saw it?
and you guys have covered it at pretty good length about the time in history. It was a great awakening, whether you call them hippies or whatever. It was a new age. And so I'm not saying people didn't experiment with other drugs, but marijuana was, front and center. And so the demand was there, and people were not growing it. But then there were some people probably tried, but to no big extent.
Sure.
So the demand was there, and we supplied it. So.
Yeah, that's funny. It's funny how the demand is still there, right, today, right? I mean, everybody just wants to smoke some weed. Uh, and it's interesting how all of these years it's been in such high demand, and such high demand that you guys created all of these smuggling careers. So you're working with all of these beach rats in Western Florida. You're bringing in a couple of loads. You're distributing out to Florida. The Cocaine Cowboys show up. How do you end up in California?
At the time, as I say, the dynamic had changed. It wasn't just a small operation on the West Coast anymore. I mean, Bruce alluded to the fact his first 50 pounds came from the West Coast of Florida, St. Pete or wherever.
Yeah.
And so it was more heat was now on that area. There were a couple of large busts, as I'm sure you're aware of, the Steinhatchee 7 group. But other groups had got busted with, a fair amount of pot. So they knew that it had been going on. They just couldn't catch them. So there was a lot of heat. The guns came out, cocaine came out, and it was a different mentality, a different, we weren't Treasure Island guys. We weren't, smugglers, prohibition runners.
Yeah.
It became a real, obviously the business aspect took place where people were investing a lot of money, and they talked at cocktail parties. And so, it lost its original foundation.
Yeah.
And it was probably inevitable when you think about it, because, 4 or 5 small groups of 6, 5, 7 guys, they're at some point they're going to grow, and so, Paul was a dear friend, a great mentor to me about stuff. He taught me how to celestial navigate, which was great. On the West Coast, if I'm not mistaken, Loran was sketchy at best. So if you didn't have some other means of keeping track of your log and your speed, your knots, your heading, all that kind of junk, fuel consumption, you were winging it.
So, Bruce, talk about meeting Tex for the first time. Paul Hill introduces you. Obviously, you trust Paul, and he's an important member of the company. And tell us what you thought.
Well, when I first met Tex, I liked him right away. There's a certain vibe about a personality that is against cocaine. A lot of the smugglers, the marijuana smugglers, made that shift over, the switch over to cocaine, which meant violence, gold jewelry hanging off you, big fancy Lamborghini cars. And he didn't make that, so it was down to earth, and so I liked him immediately. And we needed him to go on the Robin Ann. That was the first trip that he did out there. I mean, Craig used them to offload. He offloaded a boat. He moved boats around. He staged boats. He was really good at staging boats. And staging boats means you got to get a boat completely ready, go through the entire electronics, provision it to do in our case, a huge 8,000-mile journey, much greater than on the East Coast in terms of the length of time you're on the sea. So he was really good at that. And the Robin Ann was the first 40,000-pound load that we did, and we experimented with a new sort of technique. I was always experimenting with different things. Put a boat down in Clarion for communications, put one down in Costa Rica for emergencies down there, put them in Acapulco, so in case of an emergency. This one was an experiment with offloading 10,000 pounds because, 30,000 pounds was our normal load. That's 15 metric tons, which is right around 32,000 pounds, American pounds. And so we would, we had 2 trucks, and you don't want to put more than 15,000 pounds in a truck. That's your 30,000. So you don't want 3 trucks on a dock. It interrupted our flow. Our flow was 43 minutes. We'd offload it, 57 minutes. Everybody's gone from the dock. The 2 speedboats, the 2 trucks, and you add another 10,000, and you're throwing a monkey wrench into the mix. So we wanted to
where are you going to
offload.
squeeze that other 10,000 pounds, right?
Exactly. You do need a 3rd truck. It's not good. So we offloaded with a smaller boat. Ernie drove out there and did the offload, and it took 10,000
So wait,
pounds.
you're offloading the remaining 10,000 onto another boat.
No, before it comes in,
Yeah.
we're offloading 10,000.
Got it.
Tex comes in and offloads the 30. Ernie comes in 7 days later. All right. So I'm going to turn that back over to Tex. Tell him, what's it like taking the Robin Ann down? Describe that journey. Did you stop in Costa Rica? Did you, what was the whole scenario?
Well, it's as you said, it's a long boat ride, so you gotta have a good vibe with the crew, and everybody needs to get along and know their jobs. And but going down is just a cool boat ride. We were fishing and having fun, and we never stopped in any ports. We kept offshore a good bit, obviously, but coming back up after getting loaded is a different thing. And those guys had never had pot on board. They never smuggled before. They may have, sold some, or maybe somebody gave them a bail or something, but they were pretty nervous on the way back up, I can tell you. And, I think
so what's the vibe on the boat with you and the rest of the crew, knowing that you got 40,000 pounds of weed in the back?
Well, and, you can't think. If you've prepared and got your mind right, you can't think about getting busted. It's kind of so as you say, you do.
Yeah.
So you try to keep it levity and having some fun. And we had games. We had shooting games off the stern, and but you had tasks to do: maintain the boat and maintain your watches and keep everything, rolling. When somebody got a little nervous, There was one gentleman that he was pretty nervous. The closer we got up to California, he was real nervous. But you make jokes and you keep it, levity's a big deal. You read your books at night and when you're not working. But it's a different animal. It's knowing you got that much reefer on board and that you could get busted. So,
and do you see, is there much boat traffic out there, or are you out in the middle of nowhere?
Man, I will tell you, have never spent that much time on the water and not seen a vessel. It was like,
wow.
It was almost like, when we pulled up, we got into, rode the Humboldt Current. When we got off at San Diego, we're still a couple 220, 230 miles out. And that was the one thing I really liked when I spoke with the captain. Because I thought we'd just cruise up along, 50, 60 miles off the coast of Central America and, jet up past Mexico and then dump it in. He said, no, man, we're 200 plus out. I said, what? And he goes, yeah, we're about 200 plus out. I was, what the hell are you guys doing? You know how much gas you guys are using?
Right.
Shit like that. And it was much to my surprised. I don't know whether Paul Hill helped you with that, Bruce, but whoever made that decision to stay that far out was the ticket, because all you saw was the occasional airliner going across the Pacific Islands, Hawaii, or wherever. There was very little boat traffic. So when you're that far out, man, you got to have your mind right. You got to be grounded, and you're thinking of, man, what a trip this is going to be. We're going to bring it in under the Golden Gate Bridge. Under the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's like, that's the adventure part of it, and it's
Sure.
you got to be a little bit of, I think, an action junkie or whatever to get off on that, because it's not. Yeah, it's about the money at the end of the day, but it's about how you did it, how you got it. So,
well, describe the offload at sea, because that's the first time that ever happened. Well, not the first time, but that was a very rare occasion for us.
Yeah. Well, we had a 19-foot Zodiac with a small kicker, I think like a 40-horse kicker on it, and we met Ernie out at sea, and it was the water wasn't there were nice rolling Pacific waves. There weren't real choppy, big rollers. So you had to kind of time, once you pulled away from the Robin Ann over to his boat, you had to kind of time those waves, and then tie up real quick. So we did, I think 3 times we filled it to 3-4 bales high. So I think maybe it was 3, maybe it was more than that. I can't remember, quite frankly, but that was a little weird, because, that's where a lot of things could go wrong. If anybody was flying overhead, whatever. Now, this is pre-satellite, spy in the sky stuff.
Sure.
But planes did fly across, and there's 2 boats sitting out there. They do. You're too far out. You're too far west for the tuna grounds. What the hell are these guys doing? But we did it very quickly, and it was a little scary, and we.
And do you do that at night, or is that something you're doing in daylight?
No, we did that at night.
Yeah.
We did not do that in day. We danced around and slowed our speeds down so we could meet up at least at dusk. But tossing those bales wasn't easy either. Boats, you're talking about a big rubber raft, a 19-foot rubber raft with this wood decking that, God, I wanted to just take the thing when we were done and shoot the shit out of it, because it was so hard. But.
And did you lose any bales in the transfer?
Nope.
Nice.
No, we didn't.
Nice.
We had a couple hit the rail, and somebody jump and put their hand up, and somebody inside would grab it. But it was tossing bales. It wasn't. We're in a low, maybe 2.5 foot above the water.
Oh wow.
It was not bad at the top of the load. Was just thrown up there. We're almost gunnel even. With Ernie's boat, but that was.
And a bale is what, like 50, 60, 70 pounds?
No, they weren't that big. They were probably more along the line of 40, 45, something like that. Maybe a few 50s. There were a few big bales in there.
Yeah,
but not that.
All right, so you dump all the weed into the Zodiac, and then what happens?
Take it over to the other boat and get it on there as quick as possible, and try to keep your footing, and so nobody falls overboard, and we don't lose any bales and become a square grouper, So we did it pretty quickly. And Bruce, I wish I could remember. I know you've asked me, how many times did you take the Zodiac over there to try to figure out the tonnage for the pounds? And I said, man, I think it was like 4 times or something, 3 or 4 times. But it couldn't have been if we gave it 10 pounds or 10,000. I mean, we had to make 5 or 6 runs, I think.
Yeah. And which did you like doing better? Did you like doing the offload at the dock, or did you like being, on that 30-day boat ride?
Well, the 30-day boat ride was, it's pretty cool. But I had done, 14, 16 days before, coming up from Colombia type stuff. And then, Mexico was 7 or 8, 9 days, depending. So you get into sea time.
Yeah.
It's kind of a natural time out there. You're floating around and you see the stars, and the sky's beautiful at night.
Yeah.
Never been out away from any, residual light, city light or whatever. It's really gorgeous. But it's still, it can, if you let it, it'll get to you. It'll make you start getting nervous and jerky, and that's when you
Sure.
tend to make mistakes. And so,
I have a question, Tex. Since I was never there on a boat, what's it like coming into San Francisco, going under the Golden Gate Bridge, and then what was your experience in going under the San Rafael Bridge and actually doing the offload?
Well, we had talked about the approach of coming into the Golden Gate, as you well know, and it was another smart move, Todd. I know you guys have talked about this. The Coast Guard would not tend to, I think they were they didn't, as a matter of policy, board ships in the dark, or suspect ships, I should say, or suspect boats. So we knew coming in, we got no calls from the watch house, Paul's apartment or whatever, and Richard out on the boat in the bay on the Clipperton. We didn't hear anything from him, so okay, we're gonna come in. The one thing I will say, and I'd put a little feather in my cap for this, because the captain was pretty nervous at that point. It's understandable,
Sure.
There's all of a sudden civilization and lights, and what do we got on this boat? What the hell are we
Yeah,
doing?
yeah.
So
No, it's the moment of truth, right? You spend 30 days, thinking that you're, scot-free, or you're out there, boat riding, and now suddenly you got a whole ton of weed back in your boat, and you got to bring it to the dock.
Yeah, and so I said, listen, and I went to the captain and I said, look, man, what about we get our slickers on and start fucking around with nets and stuff on the back, on the stern, get all the deck lights on, light this thing up, man. Like, it's not like, hey, we're over here. It's like, here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So,
Hiding in plain sight.
bingo. And so the hardest part, because I think we were prepping we hadn't even docked and we were prepping. Once we made the turn on the bridge, we started getting stuff ready to go,
Yeah.
And so I don't remember pulling into the dock to offload. I remember being on deck and getting stuff ready, squirreled away to start tossing bales,
Yeah.
And it's
And what was your impression? What was your impression of the company and the organization, and how they all work together, compared to your experience in St. Pete?
Well, it was much a similar vibe that the little group that I was a part of had, in that the code that smugglers are supposed to abide by and are known to abide by, and I'm not necessarily talking about the pirates code, the smugglers code.
Yeah. Yeah.
On a larger scale, there wasn't one asshole in the group that I met. And I met a good amount of the guys. I didn't meet all 200, obviously, but Bruce did have I was so impressed with the well-run, I did not know, however, at the time, that there was a boat going down, one heading to go down, one coming up, and one being staged. And I'm going, this guy's got his shit dialed in. Who is this guy, So Paul Hill, when he brought me out, said, now look, this is big time. And I said, well, what's big time? He goes, tonnage. So I'll never forget that.
Right.
But there was a lot of backup plans, a lot of safety nets for crew and people on the dock. I didn't know about speedboats and stuff, and in fact, I was very impressed that I knew there was several loads. I met some of the captains. I became friends with a couple of them, good friends with a couple of them. Sure. And they all said the same thing, man. We'd do it again. These guys got this thing dialed in.
Nice.
So,
and what was it like the first time you met Bruce? Here is this 5'6", right, skinny, long-haired guy who is running this entire organization while he looks like he's 18.
I thought something like that, but I'll tell you what, it didn't take but a few minutes of talking to him, and he just had such a good vibe. Here's a guy that's worth millions, and I don't, to this day, still don't know how much, but never once did he act like he was that.
So I want to back up a little bit. When the Robin Ann came in, the Robin Ann was not on the hot sheet. And we mentioned the hot sheet, that we would get, as smugglers, we would get a list of all the, not only the frequencies for the Coast Guard and the frequencies for the police, the frequencies of DEA, but we had the hot sheet. The origin of the hot sheet came from Tex. So Tex, tell them how that came about, that you actually were providing all the smugglers with the hot sheet and starting in Florida.
Well, it's a good story because I was fishing down in the Keys, and this young kid was fishing along the same area, and we're just snook fishing, so it wasn't like we're real serious, but we're just having some fun. Got to chatting, and I saw you had a Coast Guard shirt on. And I said, well, let me talk to the other side here and see what they're up to and whatnot. So we got to chatting, and he says, yeah, I'm stationed in Isla Mirada. My dad was a bigwig. He's still up in D.C., so I guess I'd follow in his footsteps. So I was like, yeah, really? Wow, that's cool. So somehow it came up about, well, you see a lot of action? You stop at all these smugglers and what's going on down here and all? He goes, yeah, we have a good idea of what boats they're using, because we have this hot sheet, we call it. And I said, what was that? So we had this hot sheet. I said, hot sheet? Playing dumb. I mean, I stopped fishing and just hooked in and said, look, can you get copies of that? So you and I can make some money selling this to these idiots.
Right.
So he said, really? And I said, yeah, man, how much do you want for it? Well, I don't know. Let me think about this, because this, and I said, no, I mean, listen, I'm not pressuring you, but I know people who buy it, and you and I could make a few dollars, Well, okay. And about 3 or 4 days later, I get a call. So did you make a decision? How's it going? He goes, yeah, it's not that big a deal. But I'll tell you, if you say you got a lot of guys, and I said, well, I mean, I don't know how many, but I'd give you $5,000 for it. It's out every month, right? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. All right. Well, I'll give you $5,000 if you want to get me this month's, and there's an introductory offer next month's for $5,000. He goes, yeah, okay. I said, all right. So I turned around and sold them for 10.
Oh, wow.
Never charged you for that. Should have probably charged Paul Hill, but Paul was working with another gentleman. He bought it every month for 10, sight unseen. He was glad to get it. But yeah, I shared it with some other people too, when I knew somebody was doing a load or something, like I say, there was so many small groups and so many people doing this by the 82, 83, that, it wasn't hard to pick people out. Those that were foolish with their pirate games, would go buy new trucks and new cars and house on the beach and all. And you go, oh, okay, man, just put a sign outside. Hey, here I am, come get me, so.
Right. Smuggler lives here.
Yeah,
right.
So the Robin Ann, what year was that?
We keep debating, and boy, I wish my memory was better, because I think it was in the latter part of 81, because Craig was still around. We were living together.
Yeah, so the Robin Ann was one of the last Colombian loads we brought in, not the last, because what happened by that time, I started migrating over to Thailand. I had a couple new partners, Al from Florida, from St. Pete Beach, and his partner up in New York, which was amazing. I went up to New York, a quick story real quick, and we took a seaplane to his house. He lived on Long Island, and we pulled up to his dock, and this is the first time this guy was running in hash loads, big hash loads and tie loads, and in his closet, he goes, oh, open the closet and grab $100,000. And there was like all these boxes, big boxes, bigger than the boxes I had, and suitcases and briefcases I had, full of $100 bills. And so we were migrating over to Thailand. We did a few Thai loads, and then after I got busted, Craig did one more Colombian load. So the Robin Ann was one of the very last of this long line of smuggles that was coming into the dock.
And
what was the pay like? What was the pay like, Tex? Did Bruce pay you fairly, or did he overpay or underpay?
Sensitive
more than-
subject.
Well, if any of the surviving crew members are listening to this, I'm probably in a world of shit. Maybe Bruce too, but I was paid a few extra dollars more than the regular crew guys were. It was my understanding. I later found out that the crew was usually a captain and an engineer and a first mate, and it was 300,000. And starving or not starving, but fishermen down on their luck, or big boat payments are coming up, and the fishing's not good. Put that in front of a guy like that, and if he's a good enough seaman and he trusts his abilities, trusts the person that's offering him that, they're going to jump and do it.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I got more than the regular share.
He got 125,000.
How come?
Well, I was told I was and then a lot of loads did have a owner's rep, as it was called, but I also spoke Colombian Spanish, not Mexican or Castellano, Spain Spanish. I spoke all of that, but I had spent time in Colombia, and so I had the lingo, the different things. Like down in Savannah here in Georgia, we say how y'all are.
Yeah.
So to clarify, as a crew member or owner's rep on the boat, he got 125,000. That was his pay. Normal crew member was 80,000. All right. Of the 300,000 that I paid the captain and crew, traditionally it was 80 for two of the crew and 140 for the captain. He got 125. Now keep in mind, this is a 40,000 pound load, so there was more loads and a little bit extra work because of the offload over to Ernie, that 10,000 pounds at sea. A little bit more work than normal.
After this load gets to the dock, it gets unloaded. Then what's next, Tex? I mean, are you just looking for another load, or you just get a big payday? So are you chilling for a while? What happens next?
Yeah, chilling for a while, and that's what you do after you bring a load in, or you get involved. Everybody just chills and gets out of town, and let's see if there's any fallout, that kind of thing. But you celebrate, obviously. It's quite the accomplishment. But
sure.
In this case,
did you have were you involved in the hooker cocaine parties that Craig used to have?
My mom's watching this, man.
I think he was, Todd. I think he was.
Well, that's not a no.
Oh my God, am I pleading the fifth? Yeah, Craig did do a great job. And usually you left out one of the bigger things. We usually go to a nice restaurant, 10, 8, 7, or 6, 8 of us, 10 of us, whatever, and have a great meal and have a few drinks and just, celebrate. And then the stuff went on afterwards. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to hang around, be seen in the same areas, whatever. You bring a load in and it's done, everything's smooth, it's out of your hands. You lay low. But there was a curveball regarding the Robin Ann, and that was we're trying to decide, quite frankly, and I'm sure that Bruce, as analytical as he is going to get to the bottom of the exact date as to when we brought the Robin Ann in, because right at that time he was either involved with the Chicago legal beagle stuff or the Ukiah. And so we're still trying to figure that out. But I was told basically, after cleaning up the boat and all, usually they were very good. I knew this, I've heard it before from Big Don, one of the previous captains, that they got paid right after the Colombians got paid, the crew got paid. And that was a beautiful thing, because that wasn't always the case.
Right.
So, but I was told when I got off the boat and took it back out of San Francisco, headed south and just chilled, that, okay, here's your envelope, the rest is coming, but you need to get out of town. The shit's hit the fan. Well, that's all I had to hear was, what do you mean the shit's hit the fan? Well, I didn't think about Bruce. I didn't think about any of the guys I'd met out there. I really thought about Paul, the guy that brought me out. Like, oh shit, he was a big wig. I knew that he was one of the right-hand men, if you will. Man, something's going down, so yeah, I got a plane and got out of there.
Yeah.
So
And how do you sum up the experience, working with the company, working with Bruce, and how that experience sort of, moved you into your next stage in life?
Well, I can tell you that if I had the opportunity, I'd do it over again without thinking about it, because it was very. If you were involved in any way, shape, or form in staging a movement, a transport, whether it was going down and talking to the campesinos, the farmers, or whether it was getting a boat ready to go with all the parts you could think of, and redundancy, uh, you know, you get a great satisfaction seeing how well the whole thing ran. This was very professional. I mean, uh, very, very well thought out, all the contingencies covered. There was talk on our trip, like, well, what the fuck are we gonna do if we get busted, And
Sure.
you can't be thinking that way, Well, I'm not gonna let you rot in jail, okay? So just shut up and call your lawyer. Somebody was gonna reach out. Somebody will
Right.
come by.
Right.
It's not that kind of operation. So yeah, I mean, it reminded of me what me and a few friends started, and on a much grander scale, and knowing what it takes just to do, small little loads and keeping it quiet and keeping it, uh, to do the magnanimity of the operation, the company, as he calls it. And when I was out there, I did not know that it was that big. I knew there was a lookout house. I knew right overlooking the harbor. And I knew that there was a guy out there in a communications boat, whatever. And I knew that the setup at the dock was just first class. I mean, he talked in one of the episodes about how the radar couldn't get him. And, it was like there were blind spots, and the way the whole thing was laid out. The whole thing with the building the houseboats. Man, now that's serious business shit. That you got to have a business mind to pull that off, and then run this operation, even with a couple of good colonels, to run this operation to the extent that both the Perlowin boys did was, I'm proud to be a part of it.
Yeah. And once you heard that Bruce got busted, what happened to you at that point?
Well, I skedaddled. I went back to Florida and hung out for a little bit and chilled, And,
Did you ever get indicted and go to prison?
No, sir.
Why?
Well, now I have to clarify that. I did have a mini vacation in Barranquilla, Colombia, in the jail for one joint in my cigarette.
Wow.
But that was a different time. The reason he never did, because I kept my mouth shut.
Well, and that was
about 100.
That was the other thing. You had, I guess there were some guys that couldn't handle the pressure, maybe rightfully so, whatever their reasons were. I can certainly step back now and say, well, shit, what else was the guy going to do, But you, for 9 years, the way I understood it, never said a thing. In fact, I'm told you wrote letters to the various judges, the various crew that you had that were charged, wrote letters to each and every one of their judges saying how you kind of hoodwinked these poor fishermen into doing this, and that they were never going to get caught. They don't know anything about this. We've been doing this. Don't worry. And I thought that was pretty. Talk about the Pirates Code.
This is an article. It just happened to be laying here. It says, Kingpin of organization sought leniency for Monterey fishermen. And, I just said that these were honest, hardworking fishermen that were losing their boats, and they would have never, ever done this if it wasn't for me talking them into it. And then I minimized the role each person had. And I ended up doing more time than everybody else put together. They got community service. They got, 6 months. They got, 180 days. It was a very rewarding. I mean, I had a ball in prison. I got 5 college degrees, read 100 books a year. I was in co-ed prisons. So it was not a bad time for me. It was learn, grow, and study for 9 years.
Well, yeah, we're gonna get deep into your prison stay, in another episode. But tell me what it was like, having guys like Tex available to you, and knowing that, you can secure all of this weed.
Well, it was just like I said about Craig, with not stealing any money, and it's always going to be there. It's a sense of incredible confidence and security that someone is well experienced as Tex or the other seamen. The other seamen were experienced seamen, in the Pacific Ocean and with boats. Tex was an experienced smuggler. And it just gave me, I could say, go to Colombia, get a load, and come back. And
Right.
no matter what happened, he's going to go to Colombia. It's like he could take a letter to Garcia. I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but anybody who it's not, Google take a letter to Garcia. You just tell them what to do, and they go and do it. No matter what it takes, they can take a letter. Tex can take a letter to Garcia, and he did.
Got it. Awesome. All right. Anything else you guys want to wrap up on? This has been fascinating, Tex. I appreciate you sharing your life with us here. Anything you want to add about the company or Bruce or
Well,
your experience with him?
yeah, just what I don't want to appear to harp on it or dwell on it, but the whole reason why I got into this stuff in the first place is a good bunch of buddies, brothers, and we all had a code, and that was don't rat, don't say anything, don't go out and spend all your money and all that stupid stuff. But when I did not realize it, he did 9 years. Bruce did 9 years, and some of the other guys who were culpable as ever caught with the goods, 2 years, 8 months probation, whatever, all because he honored that code. And I'm not talking about the Pirates Code, Pirates of the Caribbean thing. There was a Pirates Code, but there was a code amongst the guys who started this thing that was you don't rat, you don't turn. We have a war chest. Our little group even threw 10 or 15 on each trip into a war chest for the event of a legal situation. So I didn't know that about him, and I didn't really know. I knew more. Craig and I were buds. I like Craig a lot. He was a character. I still sometimes want to call him Tony. So, but we were roommates, and he would talk about his brother, and I liked the way he talked about his brother, respectful and all that. But
All right, so you were roommates with Craig. So is it true he had 32 girlfriends?
Oh, this was a stud. this guy. Well, he was a good-looking guy, and he had a good rap, and he was a funny guy. We used to have a lot of laughs, but I don't know about 32. I mean, anyhow.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's awesome. Bruce, anything else you want to add?
No, I think that sums it up. Now we're getting towards the end of this run. I love what we're doing because I see a lot of podcasts. We're going to have I can't wait to, we'll go through the prison experience because that was hysterical. I can't wait to get the other smugglers on.
I think you're the only person who ever says, oh, yeah, my prison experience was hysterical.
Right. Well, my best friends are spies, assassins, terrorists, hijackers, jewel thieves, and that's just the females.
Right.
So,
right,
we're going to have guys on like Tommy Powell.
Yeah.
All right. And, most of these guys have written books and, or there's documentaries on them and there's podcasts. So I can't wait to tell their story because we're all I got the name, the King of Pot, but they're all kings of pot, all of them. Yeah. Tex is a king of pot. We're all sharing that title. And a lot of us were convicted on the Kingpin statue.
Got it.
Well, the bottom line,
if
I may, Todd, the bottom line thing is that what you guys are doing, and it's really cool that you're familiar, as it were, cousins or whatever, that that you're doing this. And it really, it's a chronology or the history, if you will, of how this reefer smuggling started. And people can make movies and make, documentaries and write books, but nobody has done what I think Bruce is attempting to do in that, and you as well, documenting this thing and how it all evolved. So people said, well, wait a minute, let's get some seeds and grow our own. Yeah.
Right. And it turned into a huge industry today.
Yeah, exactamente. So pretty cool.
Yes, sir. Well, Tex, I appreciate you sharing the day with us here today. It was it was awesome just hearing your stories and, great to finally meet you. I'm sure that later on in the series, we might have you back and talk about, the after years while Bruce was in prison.
Yeah.
And Bruce, we'll see you next week, as always, as we continue the journey to learn how Bruce did become the King of Pot. All right, everybody, thanks again for joining us right here on Becoming the King of Pot. Tex, thanks for joining us here. And Bruce, I'll see you next week. I'm Todd Denkin. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Tex E.
You're welcome, guys. Thank you very much.